Warning for this video, as there will be talk of attempted suicide and massive spoilers for Final Fantasy VI. If you are easily startled or are avoiding spoilers, click away now. Also some minor spoilers for 4, 9, and 16, but only for the beginning, so click this timestamp if you're just worried about those games. Final Fantasy is home to many beloved characters spanning the generations, from happy-go-lucky thieves to shy dark knights to revenge-driven paladins. One that falls under this fan-favorite bubble is the plucky treasure hunter, Locke. Locke is one of the first playable characters you meet in the story of Final Fantasy VI, and he's a great character in his own right. However, I think it would be beneficial to also talk about another character, the one that has him be more earnest about his feelings, being the Magitech General Turncoat, Celes. So to end off this month of love, let's delve into one of gaming's most beloved couples, as their stories complement each other, and one without the other is an incomplete narrative, a puzzle only half solved, and how the relationship that blossoms from these two is one of loss and hope. Before the game begins, there's some backstory to lay down on these two. We'll start with Locke. Locke was born in a village by the name of Culligan, raised by a single father who was a world-renowned treasure hunter. He's a snarky and courageous soul, eager to explore and find any kinds of riches like the treasure hunter he is, and to give a good thrashing to the Empire. In his teenage years, he had fallen for a girl in his hometown by the name of Rachel. However, while Rachel loved him back, her father did not approve of him. So one day, to prove himself, he takes Rachel into a cave rumored to have a very rare piece of treasure. However, the bridge that Locke is standing on begins to crumble, and Rachel manages to save Locke, but falls into a chasm, knocking her out cold. Several days later, Rachel awakens but has amnesia. Rachel's father then kicks him out and Rachel rejects him outright. Locke then leaves Culligan to let her life start anew without him. Shortly after, a raid on Culligan was staged by the Empire, killing Rachel in the process. Locke returns after a year and learns that as she died, her memory returned, and that the last words out of her mouth were his name, which caused Locke to spiral into a deep guilt and saying that he should have been there for her. An old man managed to preserve her body and heard rumors of a treasure that could revive the dead. Feeling both guilt and hope, he joined the rebel group known as the Returners to find this legendary treasure and bring Rachel back and to make the Empire pay. Locke is a perfect protagonist for the tale of Final Fantasy VI, a tale of both grief and light. A man who's adventurous and bold, who's willing to put himself in very precarious situations for those he loves, particularly the women in his life, as a form of atonement since he was not there for the one he held most dear. He's a man who clearly has some baggage and seeks to have a chance at closure, to have some final words with Rachel with her memory intact. He doesn't lose touch of himself because of Rachel's loss. Rather, he continues to be himself because of a constant weight of being the man Rachel loved, in hope that he will be able to be with her again. And now for the other half of this couple, Celes. Unlike Locke, Celes doesn't have as much backstory to go over. Born and raised under the care of Cid in the Gestalt Empire, she was very young when she received her magic infusion and became a Magitech Knight, eventually being promoted to General and being infamous for the decimation of Miranda, subjugating it under the Empire. Celes, as seen at first, is rather cold and independent, as seen with how she interacts with Locke, Edgar, and especially Terra. Despite all of this, she is still able to have a sense of morals, as she is branded as a traitor and sentenced to execution. We don't know the exact reason, but it's implied she spoke out against Kefka and his plans to take over Doma Castle by poisoning the water supply. Most of Celes' arc happens in the main game itself, but it sets up a more grim regime of the Empire, how even the top generals can be squashed for one tongue slip, and makes it far more apparent to the player that the Empire is not one to be taken lightly and not one to side with. The first interaction these two have is in Locke's section of the Path Split, where he goes to South Figaro and rescues her from captivity to escape with him. Despite her resistance for help, she accepts, and when she asks Locke why he wants to help, he says that she reminds him of someone, before saying that he's just helping her because he wants to, and the two battle their way through South Figaro and up to Narshe, where Locke protects Celes from an enraged Cyan when disclosing the information he had gathered, being that Kefka is on his way to attack Narshe. This has Terra become an Esper, and the party heads to the Magitech facility to take out the Empire to prevent a second war from the Magi, as told by Ramuh and Zozo, with Celes and Locke heading the charge. They next go to Jidoor for the Opera House to ask how to get to the southern continent, and they run into the impresario who mistakes Celes for an opera star named Maria. It's learned that Setzer is planning to abduct Maria, and coincidentally has the world's only airship. Locke then comes up with the idea to have Celes take her place, considering that Maria is very similar to Celes, and have the party sneak onto the airship to get to the southern continent. During the prep, Locke went to see Celes in the dressing room, and is incredibly flustered to see her dressed so beautifully. She asks him again why he decided to help her, and he more clearly states that he's done with standing by while losing the girls he likes, and she asks if she's just a replacement for her. Locke doesn't answer the question, and Celes leaves to go on stage to perform the love song. When they're at the magic facility, Cid approaches Celes, asking if the rumors were true that she was actually just a spy for the Empire to be able to get into the Returners, and Kefka says that it was true, causing Locke and group to become very angry. Locke doubts Celes for a second when she asks if he trusts her, and vows to protect Locke this time. When asked to return the Magicite, she is knocked away and the party is rushed instead. But just in the nick of time, Celes manages to teleport Kefka, the Empire soldiers, and herself away, leaving Locke and the others to escape the facility. While Locke is helping Terra talk to the Espers, Celes reclaimed her rank in the Empire. At this point, Locke and Celes have a few one-sided conversations wanting to open up to one another, since Locke admitted that he doubted her in the facility. It's finally broken in Thamasa, after the Magicites fall into Kefka's hands and Leo's death, to where they're finally able to somewhat reconcile. At this moment is when we shift into Celes being the main protag, rather than Terra and Locke, as Celes tries to plead with the Emperor at the Warring Triad on top of the floating continent, but it's too late, as Gestalt already paralyzes the party, and Kefka hands her his sword, and to show her loyalty, she has to kill her comrades. And this is where Celes truly throws her old life away, as she stabs Kefka instead of her new friends, but to no avail, and Kefka moves the Triad out of alignment, causing the whole party to be separated, and Kefka wins. The romance between the two is palpable, as the pieces of them start being set up once they meet, in Locke seeing the parallels to Rachel and Celes breaking free of her past as an Empire general, and seeing how wrong and twisted the Empire can be, but the main actions and pieces happen in the World of Ruin section. Celes wakes up on Solitary Island, with only Cid remaining by her side. It has been 1 year since the splitting of the world, and Cid is not much longer for this world. The game gives you a choice of either feeding him the fish or to let the man die. If you feed him the fish, he thanks you and sends you on your way, but the much more telling thing is if you let him die. If he dies, Celes loses all hope, and goes to the cliff that had claimed many others. Day by day, people who have lost all hope fling themselves off this cliff, ending their life. Celes has nothing to live for. Her friends are not known if they're alive, her one remaining family member is gone, and Kefka has been able to succeed in his plans. And so, she jumps just like the others did, trying to end her life with tears in her eyes. Miraculously, she survives, and finds her one piece of hope, a seagull that has a bandaged wing, the bandage being Locke's bandana. She finds a raft in the basement and sets off searching for her friends. The two meet again when the party explores Phoenix Cave, where it's rumored to have hidden a legendary treasure. Inside, the group so far stumbles upon Locke, who's already found the treasure, the Phoenix Magicite, that Celes deduces is going to be used on Rachel, to bring her back. After clearing the dungeon, the party goes back to Culligan and Locke uses the Phoenix to revive Rachel. While it is only for a few moments, it's enough to relieve Locke's guilt, reaffirming that the time spent with Rachel was worth it, and reaffirming her true love. But she also said to let go, as she stands by sacrificing herself for him, and tells him to love her as you loved me. Once the party defeats Kefka and are escaping from the tower as it's collapsing, Celes drops the bandana that she found on the seagull and goes back for her, but the floor collapses from under her, with Locke diving in to rescue her, promising to never let go, saving her in the process. While there isn't as much to cover with the World of Ruin, as each character has their own time to shine unlike the World of Light, the romance reaches its obvious conclusion, with both parties having any inhibitions removed in the World of Ruin, bringing hope to the world after Kefka's maddening rule. A lot of Final Fantasy VI is more about subtle cues and making the most of small moments, as it is unlimited hardware. The game is about loss and grief, as every important character has lost something of value to them, and tries to live a lie after Kefka destroys the world. For Locke, it's the love of his life, and it still weighs on him heavily, so to have someone that reminds him of her being Celes is a strong reminder to keep pushing forward. Even after Kefka's ascension into a god and the world falling apart, he keeps pushing forward and trying to bring Rachel from the dead to try and get back what was lost, even if it is the ultimate form of loss, being the death of a loved one. Even so, his relationship with Celes continues to blossom, even through the times they distance themselves from one another because of the doubt that he had for her. Celes also has a loss, but rather than it being through backstory, she gets hit with it during the story, the loss of her old life. Before, she was an Imperial general, a feared one at that who had magic imbued in her. But as Kefka and Gestalt kept conquering and committing atrocities, she could not help but speak out, and in the process lost her status. She briefly gains it back when Locke and crew go to talk to the Espers to prevent a second War of the Magi, but that is ruined when Kefka turns the Espers into Magicite, and lastly when Celes stabs Kefka on the floating continent. Her roots are fully uprooted when she loses Sid at the start of the World of Ruin. So what is the solution for these two in particular? The other person in this duo is the answer. With Locke, Celes is the way to move on from old love. During the World of Light, he already started getting feelings for her, but still held fast to Rachel. When he revives her for a few moments, his old flame just tells him to be free of the guilt and to let himself love again. The last doubt that Locke had left in his heart vanishes, as Rachel is no more once she turns into the Magicite of the Phoenix. With Celes, Locke is the way to move forward with her life. Her old home views her as a traitor and is eventually destroyed with the death of the Emperor and Kefka. Her old family is gone. Her new family are those who saved her. Her new family is Locke. It's been clear since the bandana gave her the will to go on. And the one to save her in the tower from death is the one that saved her time and time again, and the one that she betrayed the Empire for. The way forward for these two would be together, and nothing short of that would be fitting, as through loss and strife, hope and happiness was found. This is further shown in each character theme they have. Final Fantasy VI has two themes for each character that both utilize the character's leitmotif. A leitmotif is a classical music technique that was used initially in the 17th century, specifically in operas, to signify a certain character's appearance. We'll start with Locke's once again, as you hear his themes much earlier in the game, starting with his actual theme. With a constant drum cadence and being very brass and string forward, it gives the general gist of who Locke is: plucky, adventurous, and always pushing forward. The small time it lets off the melody being front and center, the drum cadence keeps going. The other instance that his leitmotif appears is when his old love is brought up, appropriately titled Forever Rachel. Compared to the brass and string focus with the constant drum cadence, this one has only a harp backing, with the ones leading the melody being woodwinds. Along that, the tempo is slowed down considerably. This version shows the polar opposite of who Locke is. He's a man on a revenge and a revival quest. While there is hope in his heart to see Rachel again, it's because of anger and sadness that is the root of this cause. Celes has the exact opposite of this standard, where her happy version is not her theme, but instead the opera song she sings, being Aria di Mezzo Caraterre, translating into Aria of the half character. In the context of the play, the main damsel, Maria, is forced to marry an opposing kingdom's prince, but she can only think of her old love Draco, who she cannot be with due to the circumstances listed earlier. The lyrics are one of conflict, but fondness and hope.
Oh, my hero, my beloved, shall we still be made to part? Though promises of perennial love yet sing here in my heart.
This is also foreshadowing, as while this is just a love aria in an opera, it's one-to-one of how Celes feels about Locke, even this early in the story. And the name also carries some weight, as Celes is still missing her other half, and the same is for Locke. In contrast, the sadder version is her theme, and has a few instances it's played, but the most famous and apt scene is her attempted suicide scene. This theme is much slower, with a stronger presence of backing instruments, and the melody is once again taken by the woodwinds. And in this scene, it's the inverse of the opera. Whereas in the opera she throws the flowers and continues to live on in hope, this time she's the one falling to her demise, as there is nothing left for her to live for. Everyone is gone, and so for her, the will to go on has vanished. The last ones and the most pivotal of all is the renditions in the ending theme. For a good amount of character themes, they are usually more segmented, but not for Locke and Celes. It starts with the woodwind playing Celes' theme, and gracefully transitions into Locke's theme headed by the brass. It gives further closure that they are fulfilled by one another. Love is a trope of gaming that is never out of style, and while there are many great couples of Final Fantasy, Celes and Locke will always live on as not just one of the best couples in Final Fantasy, but potentially one of the best in gaming. The way the characters can stand on their own and yet complete each other is hard to top. This love is timeless and one that turns strife into hope.